Good afternoon, John.
Hi, Marty.
Another beautiful Friday afternoon here in Sacramento. It's warm enough to have the windows open.
Yeah, it's a nice day here too.
Yeah, it's San Diego weather here.
Yeah, we're both enjoying it. So.
Exactly. So last week, we spent some time going over some of our accountability principles. We didn't get through all of them. We can go through that list and complete that if you want, or maybe you have some comments about the workshop that you facilitated last week. The microphone is open.
Well, let's go back to those. When we talk about those, there's it goes. You never know where it's going to go, or who's going to say what, or what
Right.
concept or idea, or whatever somebody needs to hear will come.
Okay. Well, I think that we got through the issue is not the issue. I don't remember, did we tackle people always treat me the way I want to be treated?
No, we did not.
Okay. Oops. Sorry. I lost, there we go. Okay, so we did talk about I'm always getting what I want. We talked about it's never about the other person, which is related to the issue's not the issue. And it's also related to people treat me the way I want them to. Again, this is one of those principles that when we introduce it to folks for the first time, it seems counterintuitive. And I remember the first time I encountered this one, John, I said, well, that's not true. I don't ask people to treat me sometimes the neglectful ways that they do. And so it took me a little while to be willing to really grasp what this means in terms of, my relationships with people.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these, by the way, come from a principle that we don't have up here, but it's an underlying belief that life is lived from the inside out. That in our unity movement and the New Thought movement, we say we create our world with our thoughts. And so these principles reflect that understanding. And of course, the accountability work is a way for me to access those particular subconscious thoughts, which I was blissfully unaware of for most of my life until I got introduced to the practice. So how is it possible that people treat me the way I want them to?
Well, that statement you made about unity, we create our world with our thoughts. And what I used to understand that as what I'm thinking consciously. And I had no idea that it meant the total belief system or point of attraction. I didn't realize that 7/8 of the motivation for my behavior or decision making was coming subconscious. So that's part of the thought. So if you include what I consciously want, like one of the things I wanted was to be perceived as a nice guy. Well, okay, that didn't work. And then they said, well, you are what you think. So I'll think more. I want to be a nice guy.
Right.
And it still doesn't work. So I gave up the power of positive thinking. It's like, that didn't work for me. What I didn't know was that the conscious, I want to be a nice guy, albeit misleading, I wanted to be perceived as a nice guy, which was covering up my need to please people, which was I understand it to be, and it's been added to the fight, flight, freeze, please, survival reaction. So I was being motivated by a survival reaction trauma that created a belief system that it was better to please people than to even take care of myself. The
And again,
actual
all of this, just again for the newcomer, all of this is in the subconscious mind.
right.
If it's okay with you, John, I'm going to throw this visual up just to help people visualize what we're talking about.
Yeah, the iceberg.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So
most of our mind is below that water surface in terms of what we're aware of.
and that's what we're referring to as subconscious.
Right.
And memory, the memories we draw on, and the experience that give us our identity. Not only our identity, but how we relate to other people, how that process works. And so I want to be a nice guy, which the motivation for that was trauma at trying to please my parents, specifically, well, mother. I also try to please my dad, but not in the same way. There was a wounding there, a pain there that I wasn't aware of. So this please response, and I don't want to call it a response, this please reaction was part of my survival mode. So when we say we are what we think, absolutely. Only we don't know unless we examine, self-examine what 7/8, and I won't even say 9/10 of that belief system that the thought is emerging from. And see, I like this conversation because what I understand now is that when I'm connected to my emotional feeling body and have done some work about healing or releasing some of the trauma, stuck emotion, that the thoughts I have actually come up from some place, from internal. I don't want to say internal, but it's that and much more. It's that authentic place that I came in with. It's that spontaneous. That's where spontaneity comes from, or the lack of spontaneity. So when I started healing, thought, head signals or thought was in alignment with my, I'm going to say heart or emotional feeling body. So that alignment put me in the present moment. And my intent was to live in peace. So I found myself saying no, because living in peace, I'm first. If I'm not in peace, I can't bring peace to people around me. So if somebody asks me to do something that I don't want to do, and I go to the old please reaction, I'm creating a resentment internal with me. And that resentment is expresses. I want to be a nice guy, and I find myself cussing, screaming, yelling, and doing things that are creating separation and pain in myself and the people around me. So yeah, we create our reality with what we think. And the goal is, for me, is to take that pool of subconscious information that when I started, it was full of resentment, bitterness, contempt that I didn't know about. And when I addressed it and owned the truth about whatever behavior was coming out of me, violent, coercive, mean, arrogant, entitled, and then said what I wanted instead of that, like to be kind, compassionate, loving, gentle, caring, the behavior is still in alignment with the subconscious, only the subconscious has been affected by my what I want and has changed, and I simply pay attention to my behavior and it tells me everything I need to know about what's inside me, what's motivating me, which is it's like a guidepost. It's like if I say I want to live in peace and I find myself anxious over something that happened to me and going over it and getting in a loop, well, there's no peace in that. So what am I doing internally, or what was the message in there that's still in there, hidden, subtle even, that says I need to be right, or I need to prove something, or whatever the bone of contention might have been in the dialogue I was in. So I'm going to stop.
We were talking about, so the principle that you are, I'm going to use a big word here, elucidating, is people treat me the way I want to. So I think we need to now elaborate from the perspective of what you said. And there's a word that you use that may be helpful here to the newcomer, and also to expand upon, and that is the word attractor. You talked about an internal attractor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somehow that's related to how people treat me.
Yes. Yeah, I remember saying point of attraction, referring to the law of attraction, that we attract what we resonate with, what it's like a magnetic force. So if I find myself in a situation that is chaotic and frenetic, and it's not the people around me, it's something internal with me. Well, actually, if I find myself in a chaotic, frenetic place, I simply move to safety, taking the other people's, considering, where they're at, and doing it in a compassionate way, of moving myself out of it and moving to where I have peace. And people respond to that. People, when I stopped trying to tell people how to treat me, or I stopped controlling, I stopped examining every little detail in what somebody said, I actually, people started changing around me. So they fell in line with what was internal with me, fell in line. That sounds like I'm the leader, and I don't mean it that way.
They lined up.
They responded in like.
Right.
An example of that was with my grandson when he was emoting his anger towards where he found himself, and I just simply held this feeling of compassion for him, knowing that he's struggling, and I just held it, and then he de-escalated. You can say it's coincidence. I'm going to say it's in alignment with the energy I was holding, because children, their motor mirror neurons are active, so they reflect back. That's what they do. They learn through that process.
But I think the other part of it, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the other feature or facet of this, people are always treating me the way I want, and particularly in the example that you just gave, it's not simply that our shifting of our internal belief system in the subconscious is changing, but it's also, we're not looking for the old negative energy. We're now creating and looking for positive energy. Mm-hmm. So whereas 20 years ago, your grandson giving a temper tantrum might make you see, I got to fix this, and therefore he's going to react to you as a dictator. You're now seeing a human being going through a struggle, and your commitment is, what can I do to be supportive?
Right.
So it's not just the other guy's behavior lines up with our shift, but it's also our understanding of the other person shifts.
Yes.
And so it seems to me those two things work together.
Yeah.
So
they absolutely do.
So, and this is all related to something we'll talk about, we might not get to today, but it's related to how we have love in our subconscious, what we're looking for. what we think love is and what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So before I did this work, I was subconsciously holding, there was something so wrong with me that I needed to be alone. And so whenever I would get close to some kind of intimate relationship, this danger energy would flash up. This is dangerous, can't get closer. And the other person would get it. And the other person would start moving away. And then that would give me the ability to get angry and blaming and sad and all these kinds of things, completely unaware of how I was generating this emotional repulsive force because I had to stay safe. That's little Marty trying to stay safe. So I discovered in the people are always treating me the way I want to. Before I learned accountability, people were reacting to this invisible, unfeelable stance that I was experiencing in my subconscious of I have to keep myself away from you. So close and no closer. And I remember good friends of mine saying directly to me, why don't you stop that? I remember one friend saying to me, you don't have to do the Marty Keller show. So I love you just the way you are. There's nothing you can do that's going to change that. And those were like hearing Urdu or some click language from the Kalahari. It's like I couldn't translate it at all. I heard the words. I speak English, so I got what they meant on the surface, but it didn't penetrate to the place that my friend was trying to penetrate to. Because I had the repulsive force up and running, like a force field in Star Wars.
Yeah. When I was growing up, to expand on this a little bit, I had equated being loved to being scrutinized and judged and told what parts of me were not okay. So I had my mother loved me, my father loved me, and each one of them would want me to do something that I couldn't do, like be something different. So for me to be loved, I equated this, again, subconscious, with this I have potential statement. It's like that as soon as I did something, I would be okay. So the love relationships I found myself in were with partners that wanted me to change my hairstyle, wanted me to like dress different, wanted me to not do some quirky thing I did that embarrassed them, and to me that was love. And when I discovered I had love equated with this energy of scrutiny or rejection, I simply changed that on a feeling level to love equals acceptance. And my relational experiences started changing with that. Before I discovered that, they were treating me exactly the way I want to be treated, with this feeling of just, you're almost there, John, you're almost good enough, to being seen and being related to on a mature level. It's like not everything I do. There's arguments in relationship. There's bones of contention. There's things that you. And I was able to do that without this blanket of needing to be rejected. Which put me in the relationship so that I could participate. Relationships are tough. Relationships are they're the what the old temples used to be, is to create the feeling and emotion and the being able to see yourself clearly through the other person. So it's the place where we learn and grow.
It's a crucible of spiritual presence, I think.
Yeah, that's a good definition.
One of the things that we started out talking about last week we said, I'm always getting what I want. So this is just a corollary
Mhm.
of that. People are treating me the way I want them to.
Mhm.
And the reason we break this out is because of what you just said, because our relationships are the most fundamental dynamics of our lives. I mean,
Mhm.
I can, I can testify that I used to get indebtedness and those kinds of things. Those were impersonal forces that showed up in my life as bills to be paid that I couldn't afford to pay or whatever. So that's an illustration of how I was getting what I wanted, because I had a feeling of inadequacy and not good enough, and it just showed up in the financial realm
Yeah.
like that. But in personal relationships, that's way more important to me than my bank account.
Mhm.
So that's one of the reasons that we break this one out. People are treating me the way I want to.
You know, that's actually everything we do is in relationship to another person, people, places, and things. That is where all my pain comes from, is in relationships. I mean, um, I used to want to be a hermit living in a cabin someplace where nobody would even know where I was at. Um, and that speaks to the pain that came from interacting with people. Now I interact with people, and that's what I want. In fact, I want more, especially on this level, um, and on the everyday level. You know, I play with my grandson. I talk and about things with my daughter. Just what I call normal everyday things, which is part of the rich, abundant, and fullness of life. It's like it's in relationship. Everything we do is in relationship to. We're social beings and made that way. That's why we're having all this trouble with our survival mechanism. It is no longer triggered by simply saber-tooth tigers. It's like triggered by what happened to us as children. Um, that now our bodies are responding to that pain or danger that we want to get away from, and we don't even know it. We make up stories about it and rationalizations and institutions. We got our judicial system, correction system, and police system to maintain all these weird ass people that are struggling to relate. It's
Well, I would go you a step further and say that we have not just those systems, but we have social media, we have the consumer, the whole consumer market. These are all elements of the same thing.
yeah.
They're all used to keep us in our. I mean, they can be used opposite. Don't get me wrong, but they're generally in our culture used to keep us in to keep the subconscious from becoming conscious,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
we can then create choice and live by intention rather than just compulsion.
I think the first industry to go under, if everybody's living an authentic life, is the cosmetic industry. It's like, this is who I am. This is who I am. Instead of trying to be something I'm not.
So you mean there'll be no more plastic surgery and
Uh, yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
no more ginormous diet food distribution, Jenny Craig and all those kinds of things?
Right. Right.
Actually, it would be impossible to even think about what the world would like in this moment when this transcendence has occurred at a mass basis. So it's just outside of our experience.
Right.
So, but that won't stop us.
No, no, no. We can visualize it, and then once we get there, then we'll figure out what it is.
Yeah, it's relative to what I've experienced on an individual basis when I've worked through the traumatic obstacles, and I tell the truth about myself, and I experienced that we've talked about this before, that sense of the body coming into alignment with the emotional truth, the physiology, the emotions, everything line up, and there's a release.
Yeah.
There's an energetic release, which is then allows something new to well up. We
Yes.
can call it joy, we can call it ecstasy, doesn't matter. But the truth is, until I go through that experience, I cannot know what is going to show up instead.
Right.
I don't have
Yeah.
any touchstone for that.
Right.
And so this is the thrill of transcendence, if you will, which is that it's a from the perspective of the old understanding, it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons we're reluctant to undertake it, because from our perspective of a traumatized child, we've got this safety and security thing figured out, so we're not going to put it at risk with
Right.
something new.
Yeah. Safety and security, albeit frenetic and miserable.
Yeah,
And then see, I normalized that misery.
exactly.
I kept trying harder and harder with the tools I had to get out of it, which was actually what I needed to do to maintain and sustain it.
Right. Well, again, that's why this is so subtle and powerful, because it's difficult for us to really believe, difficult for me to really believe that my mind is not my ally in this work. It's difficult for me to appreciate that a little kid, in order to make himself safe from trauma, actually trained my mind to participate and to collude in keeping me safe.
Yeah.
And so that's, again, the power, we talked about this before, the power of the group work. Because by myself, when you said that thing about the hermit going off in a cabin, I could feel a little leap in my body, because
Yeah.
I still have that same energy. Well, I'd be a lot safer.
Yeah.
And therefore, but if I were in that cabin doing my spiritual work, it might not be as transformational as it is if I sit in a group of people and I struggle to tell a hidden truth that on the inside of me feels like death, but once I've completed it, feels like liberation.
Yeah.
And so the group becomes the field of infinite possibility. It becomes the field of unconditional love, in which I can actually experience transcendence in a safe environment.
Yeah, that reminded me of was it Theo taking the red pill? It's like, okay, you really want to know what's going on? Sit here for a minute. Take that, and that's a red pill. Sitting in the meeting, it's like, okay, we're gonna like blow all this illusion. Whatever you thought was it is okay. It doesn't even exist. It's something we made up in our family of origin, and then together as a community to stay safe, and it's actually the absence of safety.
Yeah, it's safety for a 2-year-old, but I'm 70.
Right.
So there's a different strategy that I'm choosing to learn. It doesn't mean I still don't want to feel safe and secure. Of course I do. I'm a living organism. So all living organisms have survival as the #1 priority of the energy. However, human beings have the capacity to go beyond survival into thriving, creativity, transformation, all of these words that are pleasant to most of our ears, even if we don't know how to experience it.
Mm-hmm. And if somebody did get something authentic, we couch it as something exceptional. He's an exception,
right?
Or they're an exception, or
Or
they're
that's a miracle.
lucky. It's a miracle. Instead of seeing it as available to all of us
all the time.
All the time.
Well, I think that's related to our next principle. So I'm going to just throw that up here. And the next principle is: the quality of my life is determined by the focus of my attention. The quality of my life is determined by the focus of my attention. What does that mean?
Again, not just what I have been trained to focus on or pay attention to, but what my total conscious, subconscious belief system, perception that I created. So here's what I tell people when I ask them, like, what they want, what are you paying attention to, or what are you focused on? What's the focus? They say, I don't know. It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, okay. And it's in the question, what do you want? Because what do you want? Answering that question creates a focus. You start paying attention to that. And I tell them that if you don't consciously know what you want, you will continue to get whatever it is you have. It will just simply repeat. And when you bring it up into your conscious mind and contemplate, what do I want? When I ask them the question, they're like, why do you ask me that? It's like, what do you mean, what do I want? And most people really can't just answer that off the cuff. I mean, I know if I ask you what you want, you'll tell me exactly what it is. When somebody asks me what I want, I want more of what I got, which is serenity and peace. When I was first introduced to that question, I had no idea. I want you off my back.
Right.
I want you to behave. I want you to act like a human being. I want you to treat me with respect. Okay, you can't have that. I can give that. And when I give it, that's when I have it. So that's it's another whole podcast. But so the quality of my thoughts and focus determine my quality of my life. I'm like beating this statement up, but so
Well, let me help you out if I could.
yeah.
So I think, first of all, let's notice that word quality. So the quality of my life, is my life rich? Is my life poor? Is my life expansive? Is my life folded in? Is determined by what and how I pay attention to the experiences of my life. So if I see everything as a danger, then the quality of my life will be defensive, and therefore it will tend to be darker, as opposed to if I see life as a playground and something to be explored, then the quality of my life will be lighter, it will be expansive. And so I think that's part of at least how I interpret this, because focus is essential. You know, even in quantum physics, the evidence is, for example, that if you were to try to figure out what any given atom is composed of, what's going on with the electrons revolving around it, it's just a field of possibility until we look at it. And when we look at it, it collapses down into a specific. So this principle is even an elementary principle of physics, that focus and attention have everything to do with outcome. And so in intentional living, what I learned is to pay attention and create intention based on how I'm feeling. So we were working with a couple people the other night who were really struggling with this question that you were raising. So how am I feeling? And we were able to say, well, how does it feel to not be able to feel? And again, I didn't think of it the way you just explained it, but they were now putting focus on a very particular place in their bodies, or they were looking to find that place in their bodies that they could then put a focus on. And the minute they did that, everything changed.
Yeah.
And that's a principle that we can apply 24/7.
So I'm liking our conversation, and we're having a conversation based on our experience, and saying these things because we have experiences around them. We've had breakthroughs. So somebody listened to this. The quality of my life is determined by my focus. they may feel they're fine.
Mhm.
It's like, and I have this issue. Let's fix this issue. When what's happening, they're creating the issue from the subconscious. So us talking like we're talking is gobbledygook. It's that click language.
Right.
Somebody listening to this, number one, there's nothing wrong. Everything's fine. We're simply having a dialogue about this. Nobody, there's nothing to get here. Simply listening to us will offer insight to maybe even what we're saying or their own situation. So usually for somebody to change or look for something, in 12 steps we call it hitting bottom, or there's something that is untenable, something that's not working. I don't even know if I said this at the beginning. I want help. I didn't need help. But I wanted something that I couldn't identify. I wanted something different. People listening to this, probably first time or maybe second, third, fourth, fifth, there's nothing to get. And in this dialogue, in them participating or just simply listening to this dialogue, there will be an insight that comes sooner or later. The need to understand this is a block to embodiment. So I just wanted to make that point, that nobody needs to be fixed. There's nothing wrong with you. There is, if you identify pain or discordance or irritation, agitation, otherwise annoyed, and are looking for relief, then this conversation will simply shift. If you do that now, if somebody listening to this just goes, oh, I'm struggling with my wife or husband, partner, and they make me mad, or I see them as abusive. So this is what we're talking about, that point right there. There's something you're doing to participate in it, and that may sound like an accusation. I'm just stating two people can't interact unless two people are interacting, and you're part of it. So the accountability process, just I'm going to own my part. Not that I'm wrong, bad. The things I did before my recovery absolutely created separation and destruction. Yes. So the things I do now create connection and empathy and togetherness. And
It's totally funny and lawful that I had the same thought jump into my mind. I think right around the time the thought jumped into your mind as we were having this conversation. I was going to, there's no blame or judgment.
right.
You were going to, there's nothing wrong. But I was thinking that we're using this word quality just as a non-value noun. Just there's things have quality. And what the quality is determined by how I put the focus of my attention. And that's inescapable. The quality of my life is always determined by the focus of my attention, but nothing's right or wrong, like you said. It's like, it's just what is. And then the question is, what do I want? If what is showing up in a way that doesn't serve me, it makes me, like you were saying, irritated, angry, uncomfortable, confused, maybe even despairing, then there are tools that I can use to explore that and to release any hidden obstacles to feeling something more potent or more joyful or whatever it is I would really like to have instead. So
Yeah.
I got a kick out of the synchronicity. This is how this works.
Yes. So yeah.
Let's see what our next principle is. I don't want anyone watching this to think I memorize this stuff, because I don't. I know them, but I don't. Oh, well, this I think is coherent to what we were just talking about. Life happens for me, not to me. Life happens for me, not to me. What the hell does that mean?
Let me tell a story. I'm gonna
Okay.
out my older brother. I won't say his name, but um, when I got into recovery and started interacting with my brother, I started saying I love you, and he had no idea what to do with that, and it became a joke. So I was golfing with him and his son, and I hit a putt, and it just almost went in, and my brother, in my assumption, sarcastically said, "You didn't love it enough, John." And I said, "Okay, I'm gonna love my ball into the hole." And by the way, I love you, bro. And he, we did that for a year or so, and then he was a consultant. He'd go and do classes all over the United States, actually all over the world. And he did a class in, I think, Michigan, and he would do classes for utility companies. So he was working with a lot of young men, and a couple of the guys had rollerblades. And my brother's athletic and sees himself as a jock, which he is. I mean, I don't mean that derogatory. He's athletic and does it well. So he went rollerblading with these kids, younger men. They could have been 40 men anyway. So he was going downhill, and there was a first time, second time on rollerblades, and he took a header. He ended up in the hospital with 7 stitches in his head. I didn't know about it, but I did get a card for Thanksgiving, believe it or not, that said, "Just want to let you know, life is short. I love you, John." And so nothing happens to me, everything happens for me. So if I'm resistant in searching or finding or looking, the universe will provide a way for me. And the universe provided that hill and that ditch that he went into to provide for him insight into the value of relationships. Okay, that's what I mean. That's a story about what I mean. Everything that happens to me is an opportunity for me to either affirm myself or grow. I had well, I could tell another story, but that's pretty much it. So if I'm struggling with my daughter, that struggle itself is happening for me to, and my focus is either to learn, grow, or to affirm that I've been learning and growing, and to be compassionate and kind and participating on a loving level. So
Okay, so I want to hit this head on. So that's all very nice and highfalutin and everything, and I support it. But if I'm listening to this for the first time, I'm thinking something like, why does such and such happen to me? Why did I get sick? Why did I get fired? Why does my wife not treat me with respect? Why are my kids not listening to me? I mean, there's a our culture is a blame culture, which, by the way, certainly reflects our internal collective what do we want, but we won't get into that today. So I think there's what I've learned in the accountability practice is that because whatever happens to me provokes a response from me, it's that response that is something about me.
Yep.
That I can now learn something about myself. It doesn't mean that getting sick is good. It doesn't mean that getting fired is good. It doesn't mean that having problems in my relationship is something to celebrate. It just means that when those things occur and I react, I can either stay in reaction, or I can say, okay, what is this reaction saying about me? What can I learn about myself? And then if I can stick with that long enough, it might provide, like you're talking about with you and your brother, it might provide some information, some insights that I otherwise wouldn't have gotten if I just stayed in blame.
Yes.
Which is staying outward focused rather than inward focused. Again, I'm not saying when situations are difficult, don't take care of yourself. I'm just saying, notice the reaction when you can. And particularly if the action is out of proportion to what's happening out there. If you say something and I'm enraged enough to want to storm out of the room, then I can say, why did you say that to me? Or I can say, look at that energy reaction, what's going on in me?
Mm-hmm.
And then move to the accountability practice and end up with, what do I want?
Right.
That took some time to learn, to be able to say life, to be able to affirm with conviction that life happens for me, not to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty much there now, but it took a long time.
Well, these are, what's that Japanese koans?
Koan, yeah.
Koans. These are like koans. It's like, what? It's
Right.
like it stops people in their track. And the Don Miguel Ruiz wrote the 4 agreements. So he wrote a whole book on the next agreement. The 5th agreement was always be skeptical. It's like, what are you talking about? And in that examining or needing clarity, or even saying, when you're hearing this, these 2 guys are full of shit, is part of the process. I'm gonna say, we're gonna have those principles in your Rusty Nail Club up on the board. If it works for you, take it. If it doesn't work for you, it's okay. It doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for everybody.
Right.
The willingness to simply be in the space or the conversation where these are offered, listening to this podcast. It's like, you can listen to the podcast and then wonder at what the hell we're talking about. And hopefully it's my intent that it creates some curiosity in you wanting to find out more. And I invite this to prove me dead wrong. Let's have that conversation. Let you tell me what it is that in your experience where you say this is absolutely not true. Okay, let's have that conversation, because I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to being fallible. The great minds of our time were asked, what's the solution to the global dilemmas? And that's starvation, war, violence. Well, their one word answer was dialogue. So I'm creating dialogue. You and I are creating dialogue. And in that dialogue, something will emerge. I hope emergency, but emerge from that. And that's what I'm looking for, is that emergence of something. I'm not tied into being right. In fact, if somebody like shows me this whole thing is like totally out of line and I see it, then I'll move to what I believe is in line. And when I first started facilitating, I was facilitating stuff that is like not in alignment with where I'm at now. And I did it with passion. And I was willing to learn. And for me to be where I'm at, the mistake list is incredible. It's like, oh, I did that. Oh, I'm gonna work on that one. And coming from this vantage point, this high heel of old age, I can see the orchestration in my life. When I was in it, it was completely chaotic, unfair, miserable, and why is this shit happening to me? Well, everything that happened to me is right here in the room, and I'm talking to you, and this is happening. And I didn't start focusing on these things until maybe 50 years old, so I'm good.
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody who's under 50 listening to this, extra pat on the back.
So
I think we got time for one more here.
Okay.
What I resist persists.
Oh, and I've added to that.
Yeah.
What I resist persists and prevails.
Oh yeah.
There you go.
Let's do it right now in the live time. Okay.
Cool. Persist because I'm focused on it.
Back up to the focus, the one
Yep.
just two before.
Yep. So what I put my attention on is what strengthens. Another one that I have that's not on that list is what I fight against, I strengthen. So the resistance, the awareness, I wrote a thing about resistance. I'm going to bring it up. Here it is. And I'm going to put I in here. When I recognize, embrace, and nurture the resistance to a feeling, I find the doorway to my heart that is waiting for the knock. And resistance to feeling afraid, resistance to feeling sad. I shouldn't feel sad, or I should only feel sad for a period of time and then move on. The resistance to feeling hurt, rejected. Instead of immersing myself in the feeling, because there's some information in there for me about me and what may have just happened. The resistance to the feeling is when I see it, that's another thing we can put in that category of this is happening for me. To discover something I'm not looking at or don't know. So what I resist persists and prevails. It's like I resisted being like my dad for 45 years, and then came to the realization and the epiphany that holy cow, I'm just like him in every way, except I don't hit people as much. I had to have that little caveat because I'm not like my dad. Well, the truth was I hated him and what he represented. And the more I hated it, the more I became. That's another one. You become what you hate. Oh my God. There's all kinds of them in here. So I'm not against anything. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. I'm not against drugs and alcohol. I'm for, and then let's name it. What do you want? I'm for you having that. There's my spiel.
You know, it's interesting that the notion of non-resistance is an ancient one in the Buddhist practice.
Mm-hmm.
And the context may be slightly different, but I think it's totally analogous. And
Yes.
And that's also another koan. It's counterintuitive to our perceived wisdom in our culture, in my experience, because evil should be resisted, and COVID should be resisted, and there's resistance everywhere, and yet resistance is not the same, or non-resistance is not necessarily the same thing as approval. It's the recognition that what is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same recognition that I undertake when I do my accountability practice. If I'm pissed off, okay, I'm pissed off. I give myself permission to be pissed off. What's going on? Mm-hmm. What do I want? And so I've come to appreciate the utter radical value of non-resistance. Not saying I practice it regularly. Well, I do practice it regularly. I'm just saying not that it doesn't show up for me, and sometimes I lose the focus.
Right.
And I do resist. The distinction now is it doesn't take me long to recognize I'm in resistance.
Yes.
And to decide what I want to do about that,
mm-hmm.
if anything. Yeah. But it's interesting how all of these principles cohere.
Yes, and fold into each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So we had one more on the list. I think we got time just to see if we can sneak that in. And that is also another version of what we've been talking about. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. I I came to awareness, if I don't heal my hurt, I transmit it. And once I got that, I saw how I treated people in my arrogance, meanness, violent behavior, coercive, as in alignment with my trauma. When I felt what it felt like to be hurt, actually had that experience, I'm hurt, and was able to articulate, because it's like before that, I'm not hurt, it's just throbbing a little bit. I mean, I'd hit my hand finger with a hammer, and I, instead of saying ouch, I would cuss and scream and you know, talk about the hand manufacturers, you know, not making it balanced or and scream and yell, and the pain was excruciating. Now, when I do something like that, and I do it very seldom, I simply say, ouch, that hurt. There's a thing that mothers do that I used to think was pretty silly, is they would kiss the boo-boo on a child, and it's like, oh my God, that works. It is so, to simply recognize I'm in pain, I hurt. And once I felt that hurt, I was less willing to transmit it. I was less willing to watch somebody else go through that, now that I understood what it was. Before, they would be hurt or injured, and I'd say, oh, just shake it off. But, you know, don't start crying now. You're gonna like mess up. You're gonna get blood all over the carpet. You know, come on, let's just get on with it. And now it's like, oh my God, that must hurt. And it's hurt people hurt people. Our jails are full of, and prisons are full of hurt people. And I want to say our corporations and places of work are full of hurt people too.
Well, it's the human condition.
Well,
to be hurt. What we do with it is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I can either transmit that, or I can work on healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is a version of what we resist persists, because if I persist in not healing the pain, then I have no choice but to transmit it.
Right. Or denying the pain.
Right.
That's what I did. I denied it. That's not painful. No, I mean, I would be wearing a t-shirt and it's 45 degrees out, and my arms would be full of goosebumps, and somebody says, oh, you cold? No, no, I'm not cold. What do you mean cold? I'm not cold. And I wouldn't even feel that. And yet my body was responding to cold, but I would deny it. No, I'm not cold.
Well, I hate to end our podcast on denial. So maybe you could sum up for the listener. We over the course of today and last week, we were talking about these various principles. They're just principles. They're not, thinking about that earlier when you said that, they're not absolute truths. Mm-hmm. You can think of them as guideposts. Mm-hmm. Take what works for you and leave the rest. But these are also principles that we've discovered over time have great validity in the work that we're doing here. The work of learning to love ourselves unconditionally, and by loving ourselves unconditionally, loving the world. Radical acceptance, non-resistance. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, finding joy and fun in life. Mm-hmm.
So you say wrap it up. The concept of right, wrong, good, bad is insidious. When I accept things as they are, it's like, is it right or wrong, good or bad? Yeah. There's elements of that in there. but when I judge it, good is as big a judgment as bad.
Well, there's another koan, John.
Yeah. Um, um, Experiencing what's happening to me without the judgment gives me opportunity and choice. The judgment creates a story around what's happening, and the story keeps me out of myself. And that's where my authenticity and my genuineness and my uniqueness lie, is internal. So
It's in not merely the internal, if I could just add, but it's also in being present.
yeah.
In the present moment, we've talked about this before, the present moment has no opposite.
Mm-hmm.
When and the feeling body is what supports me in being present. What am I feeling?
Yeah.
So when I'm feeling X, I cannot not be feeling X. I can't experience the opposite. So now I'm in the place of all possibility.
Yeah. When I have clients say, you know, I ask them what do they want, and they say I want to be present, and it's like, are you sure? Because right now, in your present moment, it sucks because you're sitting in a treatment center, your finances are in the toilet, your relationship just went down the drain, your parents are mad at you. If you want to be present, if you want to experience that, okay, let's be present. But most people say they want to be present and happy. It's like there's a qualifier. They want it to be okay. The judgment be good. I want to be good. Well, okay, I support you to be present, and I'll be there with you when you go through whatever's happening right there, because it could be painful to be present.
And yet that is the bridge to that feeling differently.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's ultimately, that's why presence is so essential, and why we're struggling with the presence that a little kid felt in his or her family of origin and then froze for all time.
Yep.
Until something intercedes, hitting bottom, like you said earlier, or some other flash of the blindingly obvious intercedes, and we go, wait a minute, I'm not willing to do this anymore.
Right.
I need help. Where can I get some help?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
As always,
Yeah.
good to be present with you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And hope you have a great weekend.
I intend to.
I'm going tomorrow to get my first COVID vaccination shot.
Oh, good.
So
lucky you.
I'm grateful. Yeah. I'm grateful to Dignity Health for getting me in.
Yeah, that's very good.
All right, John. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You got it, Marty. Love you.
Love you too.